Good morning, everyone. Got your coffee? I've got mine. So listen, speaking of coffee, Stephanie, thank you so much for buying me a cup of coffee. I appreciate you, sister. Thank you so much. Before I say what I want to say today, I feel like I need to speak another version of this speech because a lot of new people have found me recently because a larger creator mentioned my name and she sent a lot of people my way. And I am not ungrateful. Trust me, I am not. But just to remind some folks out there, this is a pro-Black platform. And I am a Black person speaking to my community. And that's who I'm talking to. These conversations, while once again, I can do nothing to keep other people away from these conversations, they are for Black people. And I'm especially saying that today because I'm going to ask Black people a question. And trust me, it will be very obvious. While it will be very obvious that I'm talking to Black people, white people will chime in like they got a dog in this fight when they don't. And that's always so frustrating to me. Yesterday's conversation, I was talking to Black people. I don't know how people always get that confused, but once again, it just goes to show how entitled white people feel. White people feel so entitled to Black people and Black spaces and, our conversations and everything. Even when they feel like that what they're saying is nice and respectful, believe it or not, I still don't want to hear y'all in these conversations because these conversations are not for y'all. I don't care if you're saying something lovely. These conversations are not for you. I don't want your words. I don't want your input. I don't want your thoughts. I don't even want your prayers, to be honest. These conversations are for Black people. And Black people, once again, that's why I created the room. So that we at least have that one space. Y'all don't take it serious because a lot of Black people, we don't understand that we need spaces that are exclusive. And the reason why we need spaces where white people are not is because of racism. And as long as racism exists, we are entitled to those spaces. Spaces to where we don't have to be interrupted by them because their words and actions will always reflect their biases, their prejudices, their bigotry, and their racism at some point. And I don't want to deal with that in all aspects of my life. And so that is why I created the room. Speaking of the room, we were talking about Hurricane Katrina, that documentary that's on Hulu, and I guess it's also on Disney. And the ladies in there decided to wait until I watched it, and I told them Saturday is when I'll have time to watch it. And I watched it. And I actually knew a lot about that, because 2005, I was doing a lot of activist work. And when I lived in Michigan, we got Hurricane Katrina survivors, and they were calling them refugees. Katrina refugees, if you will, because they were settling over all parts of America, and I remember a lot of those stories. So I knew how environmental racism and just plain old racism, the huge role that it played in this hurricane, and why so many Black people, poor Black people, died during this natural disaster, and how the hurricane, while it was what caused it all, racism made this issue so much worse. Racism against Black people, poor Black people at that. There was this part in the documentary where this Black man, and it's so funny that he said it because I swear I was thinking it when he said it. He said, we sat on this roof waiting to get help for hours and hours and hours. He said, and the helicopters would pass by us, they would see us, and they would just turn around and keep going. And he said, and then they would come and they would do the same thing and over and over and over again. They weren't getting these people off this roof. And these people were in the middle of this flood and they needed help. And he said, so at one point he went inside. He got all the white people, the elderly white people, the disabled white people, and they put them on the roof. And all the black people came inside. And he said, not 15 minutes later, here come a helicopter rescuing people. He said he hated to think it, but they had to do it to see if it would work. And that is how racism works. This is a disaster that didn't have to happen because it was foretold that if those levees broke, what would happen? And they knew that the levees weren't going to hold forever. But because these neighborhoods were black and poor, dare I say that nobody cared. Then when the levees broke and the problem got so big to where the powers that be couldn't figure out a solution. Not only that, but they didn't want to figure out a solution. And they didn't move quick enough or fast enough, the government, the president, the United States, because most of the people affected were poor and black. They basically just didn't mind these people dying. Thank God for that one general. And then the way that it went from rescuing people to protecting property. And mind you, these were people who, tens of thousands of people who were corralled into one building without water, without food. What were they supposed to do when Winn-Dixie is down the street full of food? What would you have done? These were not thieves. These were not looters. These were not criminals. But they got profiled as such. These were people who were just trying to survive under horrible, subhuman conditions. And large news stations, media like CNN and the whatnot, framed this narrative as they were criminals and thieves, and there were people who said that they should be shot and killed on sight for trying to eat and looking for water. And yeah, getting clothing and shoes, because a lot of them were walking around in sewerage. They needed dry clothing. It was just sitting there. What else were they supposed to do? Hurricane Katrina was not just a story about a natural disaster. It was a story about American racism. Here's the question that I want to ask. And as an activist and as a black person, I have asked myself this question so many times throughout my life. What do you think the world would look like? Real question. Without racism. I mean, honestly, what do you think the world would look like without racism? Me personally, I think that if humans, I guess they're humans, hateful humans, that sounds better, would find a way to hate regardless. I think that if it wasn't racism, it would be socioeconomics. It would be poor people. I think it would be gender. I think that women would be in much more dangerous situations than we already are. I think that it would be gays and trans people that would be hated. Now, do I think they would have gone as far with those people as they went with black people and want to go with black people? Like, would they have enslaved them? Would Jim Crow, would they have had to have gone through Jim Crow? Would lynchings had happened? Would lynchings still be happening? I don't know. I think that hateful people will always find a reason to be just that, hateful. But I think that it's something about black skin that provokes hate within hateful people in a way that nothing else does. That's what I think. But if racism didn't exist, though, do I think my life would have been easier? My answer to that is a very emphatic yes. Although I love being black, I love being a black woman. And if I die and if I had a choice as to whom or what I came back as, I wouldn't even think twice. I would want to be a black woman all day, every day, again. I want to be a black woman. I love being a black woman. From the top of my head to the bottom of my feet, I love being a black woman. I do. I wouldn't want to be anything other than what I am. But I do think that if racism didn't exist, I don't think that the same barriers would have been put up for me. I think that success would have been a lot easier for me. I'm not saying that success is impossible for black people. We know that it is. But, you know, I've had some barriers. And I haven't had a support system growing up. I had no support system growing up. Definitely not the support system, the kind of support system that I needed in order to advance myself. But there are a lot of things that I would not have had to have dealt with. Having 3 strikes against you, and I say strikes just so people can understand what I'm saying, because they're not necessarily strikes. Societal strikes. Being black, being a woman, being poor, made things in my life harder. Much harder. And I have seen those things make things harder for a whole lot of other people who look like me. But at the end of the day, yeah, I think that hateful people will always find a reason to be who and what they are, and that is hateful. But I do think that nothing moves or triggers or inspires hate quite like racism. Tell me what you think down in the comments. With that being said, if you would like to support the platform, or the Library Pantry, or the Great Escape, or if you would just like to buy me a cup of coffee, I would certainly appreciate it so much. I will leave my Cash App and my Venmo down in the comments. Y'all have a wonderful day, a righteous day. Do something nice for someone today.